Superman is arguably the most recognizable superhero of all times, so it comes as no surprise that he has graced the silver screen in multiple movie adaptations, which all vary greatly in tone and quality. I know I'm a bit late to the party, but to celebrate the release of James Gunn's new Superman, I thought I'd watch them all to see which one comes out on top and which one dives straight to the bottom. For this ranking, I'm only looking at the 8 live-action feature films from 1978 onwards, in which Superman is a main character, so you won't be seeing something like Justice League on here. Also, mild spoiler warning for every single movie on this list, except for the newest one, and remember, this is just my opinion. Feel free to tell me where I'm totally stupid and wrong in the comments down below. With that out of the way, let's start at number 8. I'm going to begin with a somewhat controversial take. Man of Steel is absolute dog water and by far the worst Superman movie out there. The only two things I enjoy about this movie are the amazing score by Hans Zimmer and the first flight scene, which might be the best Superman flying scene out there. The rest is an ugly, grey and uninspired slog. My biggest gripe with this movie is that it completely butchers the character of Superman, because here he is stripped from all the fundamental aspects that make him likable. Nowhere to be found are his kind-heartedness, his borderline naive love of humanity, and his passionate strive for everything that is good and just. Instead, we get this always moody-looking, angry, grunting Superman who, worst of all, doesn't seem to give a flying shit about endangering civilians. Like, oh my god, Superman, why did you fly into that restaurant full of people? Oh, okay. I see. Like, I'm not even one of those people who think that you have to religiously stick to the comic book source material. You can take all the creative liberties you want and go with this edgy Jesus version of the character, but then you have to actually substitute the things that made said character interesting or likable in the first place with something, which this movie completely fails to do. I can see why so many people like Henry Cavill as Superman, and I agree that theoretically he would be a great pick to play the character. It's just that the version of Superman that was written for him is terrible. The writing in general is very lackluster. The first half of the movie consists of super uninteresting and dull exposition, while the second half is completely overloaded with overlong, nauseatingly cut action sequences, during which the movie forgets to let its audience breathe for a single second. Therefore, the second half feels boring and somehow really exhausting at the same time. Also, the two nearly immortal super beings punching each other through a city thing gets really old really quickly. You cannot let it drag on for more than 20 fucking minutes. So yeah, I really can't stand this movie. Sorry if I offended any of the Snyder bros out there. Actually, no, not really. Before we continue with my number 7, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel to see more rankings, reviews and everything else. I'm trying to reach 1000 subscribers by the end of the year, and you can be a massive help right now by pressing these 2 buttons. Moving on to number 7, where I put Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. Released in 1987, this is the last movie starring Christopher Reeve as the titular character. And also it's really bad. First of all, it's very stupid, but not really in a fun way, just in a stupid way. The first half is really uninteresting as Superman decides to rid the world of nuclear weapons, and then Lex Luthor comes around and steals one hair from Superman, which he then uploads to a nuclear missile, which he then shoots into the sun, which then somehow creates Nuclear Man, who is stupid and strong and wants to kill Superman. The humor of its predecessors is now significantly less funny, the effects look like they were made on a $5 budget, and the entire thing is just one gigantic mess. Also, Superman taking Lois for a flight and kissing her right before wiping her memory again is really weird and creepy. It's sad because Christopher Reeve really would have deserved a better final time wearing the iconic cape, and he does do his best here. At the end of the day, this was still a much more enjoyable experience for me than Man of Steel, because this at least had some trashy charm and a kind of fun Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor. For number 6, I picked the second and only remaining Zack Snyder film on this list, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. And let me start by saying that I definitely don't hate this movie as much as I do Man of Steel, although it's still far from good. The writing is again very flawed and kind of cheesy, but I will say that Snyder's overly dramatic and dark style works a lot better for this story than it did for Man of Steel. There are genuinely moments here that I like, seeing the two arguably most iconic superheroes of all time clash is sort of fun, even though I like neither of their depictions here. Actually, Ben Affleck's Batman is fine, I guess. I just don't like that he kills people. The questions raised about how humanity would react to an all-powerful being like Superman is not uninteresting, even though the movie ends up doing nothing with it. By the end, the entire thing dissolves into an uninteresting CGI half the city gets destroyed again fight against the real big bad Doomsday, who the movie decides to introduce in the last half hour. Apart from that, the action was actually kind of good, especially that warehouse fight scene. Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor is by far the worst live-action version of the character, as he is really just a weird tech bro in this. So yeah, this movie is mostly uninteresting, kind of cheesy and occasionally fun, with some horrible last 30 minutes. At number 5 we have Superman 3 from 1983, and it suffers from the same problem Superman 4 has as well, in that it's simply too ridiculous to even remotely be taken seriously. And I know these movies are supposed to be lighthearted fun, but there is simply an amount of silly that overdoes it. And hacking into a weather satellite to change the weather and then building a supercomputer which can magically do basically everything and also randomly gains consciousness at the end of the movie definitely reaches that too silly threshold. For some reason, there's also so much more slapstick humor in this one. Like, the other three have the same thing as well, but it's not nearly as prevalent as it is here. And at times, these jokes actually land. For example, I really enjoyed Richard Pryor as Gus Gorman. I thought he was really funny in here, but other times the jokes feel too forced. I don't know. I like Clark Kent going back to Smallville and reconnecting with his former classmate Lana, but then the love triangle between him, her, and his high school bully felt really forced and unnecessary. By far the most interesting and enjoyable thing here was the part where he for some reason turns evil, but that only lasts like 15 minutes and they don't really do anything with it except have a cool fight scene between the two versions of himself. Overall, it's enjoyable enough dumb fun, but really nothing more than that. In fourth place, I have put Superman Returns from 2006. This movie exists, and it is fine. Moving on with number 3, where I had no, but really, Superman Returns is the most okay thing to have ever existed. It does nothing particularly wrong and nothing particularly right. I already feel like I have forgotten most of what happens, even though I literally watched it yesterday. Its biggest flaw is that it's simply too boring. The plot is very uninteresting, and the entire Superman has been gone for 5 years and has now returned thing is handled very oddly, because what he did in those 5 years or how it affected him is barely being explored at all. Also, this movie just has a really weird feel to it in general, because it can't seem to decide whether it's a reboot or a sequel to the Christopher Reeve movies. It kind of acts as the latter, but the actors for Lois Lane and Superman are both visibly younger than Margot Kidder or Christopher Reeve were in Superman 4. Also, neither of them act nearly as well, and Brandon Routh as Superman feels like a mediocre imitation of Reeve's interpretation of the character. He's not bad, but also simply not nearly as good. Kevin Spacey makes a decent Lex Luthor, but is also outshined by his predecessor, Gene Hackman. What I will say is that this movie is pretty well directed throughout, and probably has the best cinematography out of all of them. Also, that plane sequence at the beginning was really, really great. And that's really all there is to say about this movie. Entering the top 3, we have the original Superman from 1978. And this is kind of the one that started it all, as it was the first really big and also successful superhero movie, and I can definitely see why. It has a lot going for it, like the, in my opinion, best enactment of Superman with a fantastic Christopher Reeve who fits both the roles of Clark Kent and Superman perfectly, good humor, and a lot of heart. Also, the score from John Williams is perfect. Nonetheless, I'm sorry to say that I couldn't really get into this one either. The entire campiness of it did take me out at times, as did the visual effects. And I know you can't fault the movie as it released in 1978 for that kind of stuff, but I simply couldn't help but think to myself how silly some of these scenes look nowadays. I guess it adds a sort of charm, but at the same time, it didn't allow me to take anything happening seriously. Lex Luthor and his henchman Otis are a lot of fun here, although I do think their evil plot, which was also slightly too ridiculous for my taste, was introduced too late into the movie, leaving large chunks of it without much tension or stake. Again, I can really understand why so many people love this movie. I just couldn't connect with it that much. Making the second place is Superman 2, released in 1980. I've never heard of a single person preferring this sequel over its predecessor, but here I am nonetheless. I don't know, I just think this movie took what I liked about the first one and gave me a lot more of it. Seeing Clark and Lois go on the trip at the beginning, with him having to constantly switch between his personas and her slowly figuring him out, was really entertaining and of course very well acted. The villains were really fun, and in general the movie just leaned more into the silly, funny side of the first one, which I thought really worked here. In its second half and towards the end, the movie loses me a bit, especially the Superman giving up his powers part. Like, the projection of his mother just tells him that he has to give up being Superman if he wants to have a relationship with Lois without any explanation, and he just immediately accepts that. Also, the finale is kind of a mess, with everyone just shooting weird rays at each other and them inventing new powers Superman suddenly has for some reason out of thin air, culminating in the very weird amnesia kiss by the end. But overall, I just really had a good time and a lot of fun with this, which is why it lands in second place for me. Now we have finally reached my number one spot, the movie that I consider to be the best Superman movie to date, and that is James Gunn's most recent Superman. I am so glad we finally moved on from Snyder's edgy, anti-fun version of the character back to the good-hearted, kind and silly version of Superman. And man, is it a good one. David Cornsweet was an amazing casting choice, and I can see him becoming my favorite iteration of the character, but I have yet to see more of his Clark Kent to put him above Christopher Reeve. His chemistry with Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane is great. Nicholas Holt's Lex Luthor is delightfully cartoonish and evil. The music is awesome, the inclusion of crypto works really well, and the song choices were phenomenal as well. The visuals are finally bright and colorful again, and there are so many things here that just feel right. But of course, it's not a perfect movie either. Far from it, actually. The movie tries to fit in way too many characters for its own good, and the inclusion of the pocket dimension felt a bit unnecessary and made the entire movie feel even more overloaded than it kind of already was. But after the movie was over, I left the theater with a smile on my face, and at the end of the day, that's all I was really asking for here. Despite all of its chaos, it managed to have the arguably most important thing about a Superman movie, and that is a lot of heart. I thought this was a great start to the new DC universe, and I'm genuinely excited for what's to come in the future. But what are your thoughts? Do you agree with my ranking, and did you like the new version of Superman? Let me know in the comments down below. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe the video, and you can also follow me on Letterboxd, the link is down in the description. That was it for today, see you in the next one.